Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining. Good evening, good evening. I'm excited about tonight as we get ready to get started with a real conversation. Let's talk about grief. I am excited about this second part of this series. Let's talk about grief. This is none other than Dr. DeAnna Morris of Life Seeds Coaching and Development. I am here tonight to share. I'm going to give a few minutes for you guys to share the broadcast with those that need this valuable information on grief and dealing with grief and how it affects us as a whole. So I am excited tonight. I'm going to take a little while, a few minutes, actually just a few minutes, so that you all can share the information, share this video as we dig in tonight to talk about grief. Let's share a couple of, give me a second. I'm going to share as well as we get ready to dive right into this. All right. We're going to get started tonight. So I know I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we talked about grief, the real conversation about grief. Again, this is Dr. DeAnna Morris of Life Seeds Coaching and Development. The subject of grief is a topic that has it affects everybody. It doesn't matter who it is. You are going to be affected by this topic because we all deal with some form of loss. But personally, on tonight, we're talking about the loss of loved ones. Tonight, after the last 2 weeks when we talked about did the first series, one of the things that came up, somebody talked to me and asked me would I share a little bit more about dealing with the loss of a parent, parental loss, and the loss of a sibling. I can talk about both, so we're going to do that tonight. But before I go into what we're going to talk about tonight, take a few moments and share those that you know that are dealing with grief or are still experiencing going through a current grief process of a loss of a loved one. Please share this video with them. I want to be a help, a blessing to support those that are dealing with this so that we can move forward in life and be productive. As I say always, grief does not go away. We only begin to carry it with more grace. Because of life circumstances, there's not a person in this world that at some point won't deal with some form of grief. But I want to talk for a few minutes about what we talked about 2 weeks ago. Strangely enough, you guys asked me to come back and do this again, and I chose randomly. I said, well, we'll do it in 2 weeks from the last date, and didn't look at the date, didn't think about what the date was, and coincidentally, today's date, January the 10th, would have been my dad's 71st birthday. It would have been his 71st birthday, and I felt like that was a really good way for me to honor him, to continue going forward in this. And I'll be honest, since I've done this teaching on last week, it has truly triggered me in some areas of my life that I thought that I had dealt with. But I'm grateful that we can heal together and grow together on tonight. So I am truly excited. So listen, let's talk a few minutes about last week, 2 weeks ago. We had 4 things that we talked about, 4 keys with dealing with grief. And one of the keys was to feel what you feel. I just want to run back over these really quickly. Feel what you feel. Don't allow anybody to tell you what you're supposed to feel when it comes down to your grief process. Don't expect to feel what somebody else tells you you're supposed to feel. Feel what you feel. And it's okay to feel that and deal with that. The other one was to seek help. Get some help. Talk to somebody. Get a therapist. I always say this, even though I am a minister of the gospel, I am quick to tell you the church is not the place for the church brings healing, but you need professional help to help you walk through the process. So seek help, go to see a therapist, get the help that you need. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. The other one was to create new narratives in your life. When you lose a loved one, Things are not the same. They are, let me say that over. It is not going to be the same, because this is somebody that we hold dear, that we hold precious in our life. And in the process, what happens is we've lost them. So it's not going to be the same. So it's okay for us to take a few moments and create a new normal. No, you might be used to them coming to dinner with you every week, and they're not there to do that anymore. So you have to create a new normal so that you will be able to move forward. I'm just going over some of the things from the last 2 weeks on what we talked about. And the last one was to live life on purpose. Live the life that you know your loved one would have wanted you to live. If you knew they wanted you to be happy while they were on earth, of course they want you to be happy. They still want you to be happy. They still wanted the best for you. So your job is to live life on purpose. Don't allow grief to stop you from living. It is possible that you can live a productive life and be a strength to somebody else by them watching and witnessing how you go through the grief process. And I guess the main thing that people say is, I don't want to have to, this is for me. No, everything that we go through in life, it's like a cycle. We go through these things to not only for us to heal, but to help others heal as well. And you never know who's watching you, and they're pulling strength from you as you go through the process of grief. So I wanted to go back over those 4 topics. The other video is out there for you to view. It's on YouTube as well. But I wanted to touch those. So the first 4 components that we talked about 2 weeks ago was to feel what you feel, number 1. Number 2, seek help, ask for help, reach out, get a therapist. Number 3 was to create a new normal. And number 4 was to live on purpose. Live on purpose. I'm thanking you guys again for joining on tonight. Please take a moment and share the video. Share it with those that you know would benefit from this. So listen, let's dive into tonight. So let me be really transparent before we go any farther. I told you guys last week I am not an expert on grief. I am not. I'm just a person that has dealt with a lot of loss. And I'm thankful for the grace to be able to carry it, but not only carry it, but be able to help somebody else. So 2 weeks ago, I was asked to talk a little bit more about the loss of a parental loss and the loss of a sibling. And I will say this, I've experienced both. And what I have learned is, I think for us that in the cycle of life, we expect a parent to outlive us. And even though it's painful, that is something that our minds have kind of prepared for. Even if we're not mentally prepared, that is the expectation. And but I don't think that as we grow older or as we get older, we ever consider what it would be like to lose a sibling. That's most of us anyway, because we automatically expect that they would always be there. And so tonight I want to kind of touch on both of those, and I'm going to touch on them simultaneously, but I'll go back and deal with some of it little bit by little bit. So I've talked to people about this subject of losing a parent and losing a sibling, and there seems to be a argument over which one is worse. They're both bad, but the consensus has been that losing a sibling is worse. I can't say yeah or nay. I'll say they're both very painful. But what I have learned over the years in my own grief process is that losing my dad was one thing, and I'm grateful again for being able to do this on tonight, because tonight would have been my dad's 71st birthday. So for me to have the strength to do this, those that know, I was absolutely a daddy's girl, pro my daddy, everything. So I am grateful for the strength to be able to even share. But I think losing my dad was one thing, because somewhere in my mind, I knew that my father was older. I knew that he had some health issues. And I also knew that it wouldn't necessarily be strange for me to lose him before losing a sibling. That may sound a little strange. But losing my brother James that I lost, the first brother that I lost, was totally different. It was totally different, because that is somebody that I expected to be with me forever, because we did everything together and we shared everything, and you just automatically think that your siblings are going to be there with you. But what I have learned recently, I discovered, I had a conversation with someone since we did this first video, is that one of the things that we tend to do in this kind of loss when it comes down to parents and siblings is there are two things that we do. The first thing that we do is we look for someone or attempt to replace them with something familiar. And a lot of times we look for, when you lose a parent, the first thing you look for is a father figure or a mother figure, somebody that can fill that void that you have of what a mother was or what a father was. And that is one of the worst mistakes that we can make, because when we do that, we put unrealistic pressure on a relationship that should not be based off of somebody else. Y'all with me with that? That is unrealistic pressure that we place on a relationship, because you can't replace people with someone else. You still have to feel what you feel. You still have to go through the emotions of that, because when you attempt to replace someone with somebody else, what you do is you cause that person to feel like they have to perform as the other person performed, and you give yourself a false sense of reality that this person is still here, or that this is how it's supposed to go, which creates barriers in a relationship, because it's unrealistic to think that even though someone has the same qualities as someone else, that they're able to fulfill a void of a person that has passed away. It's unrealistic. I'll give an example. When my dad passed away, for me, it was difficult to look at somebody else as being a father figure. I always had a dad, so I don't know what that feels like to think that somebody else could replace him. I just couldn't imagine that at all. But when my brother passed away, I immediately started looking for somebody to fill the void of what I had with my brother, if that makes sense. And I mean, to the point that I first started with one of my other brothers, like, I'm gonna call you to have this conversation with you, because this is the conversation that I would have with him. And it wasn't working. It was not working. It was sending me into a deeper hole, because I'm expecting somebody, because he was my natural brother, to be able to do what the other brother did, and they didn't even have the same personality. So it was unrealistic for me to put a expectation on him to be something or be someone that he wasn't. So that is one of the mistakes that we make. We try to replace our loved ones with someone that we feel like may have the qualities or the characteristics of that person as a means of filling a void. And that's not realistic. Not only is it not realistic, but it creates unrealistic values, and you don't grieve properly when you do that. Because if you do find that person to fill that void, the minute that they do something that doesn't reflect that other person, it leaves you empty again. I hope that makes some sense. Y'all tell me if that's making sense. Listen, it leaves you empty again. Then the other thing that we do, oh my goodness, this one is so big. We shy away from those that were connected to our loved one. Anybody ever experienced that? We shy away because we don't know how to engage with them because of the emotion that's attached to being around those people. But one of the worst mistakes that we can do is to separate ourselves from people that knew our loved one. Because when you go and create, I'll give you this example. I was talking to someone, and they were sharing with me that it has taken them about 4 to 5 years to begin the grief process, because they had separated themselves from a lot of the family and friends. And so they had this new circle of people. Remember, I talked about creating a new narrative, but I didn't tell you to get rid of all the people that's been in your life. So they had created this new circle of friends that had no knowledge about their loved one, so that passed away. So every time they would have a conversation, they couldn't have a wholesome conversation, because when they begin to talk about, oh, my father, or oh, my my brother, oh, my sister, the people that they were with couldn't relate, couldn't give them any, they would give them, oh, it's going to be all right, or I know what that feels like. But the best form of comfort is to talk to somebody that knew your loved one. So when you separate or have healthy dialogue about times of memories and joy and happiness, and when you don't have those people around you, it leaves you with a void feeling. Some of your healing, and when it comes down to grief, will come from interactions with people that knew your loved one, that knew their personality, that could tell you jokes, that could share with you things that they remember about the person. But what happens is when we begin to grieve, we go into a hole. We want to be alone. We don't want to be bothered. We want that loved one. That's all we want. I just want my loved one back. And that is a form of grief that leads to depression. It leads to loneliness. It leads to isolation. We're talking about siblings and parental loss. Because remember, most of the time when it comes down to your immediate parents, your parents and your siblings, you've been with these people all your life. And no one can ever replace them. But it doesn't mean that you can't heal. It doesn't mean that the grief process doesn't get better. So what you have to do is be able to recognize those patterns that you're creating that isolate you from those that knew your loved one, that isolate you from familiar behaviors. Even in creating your new normals, you still have to be able to stay connected to people that can help you live life effectively and have effective, healthy conversations about your loved one. I will tell you, when my brother James passed away, I could not have a conversation with his wife. I would talk to my brother, but we wouldn't talk about him. We would talk around the conversation. And it was such a struggle for me because I had no clue what to say about him other than I missed him. I couldn't have those moments of laughter because I just didn't want, and the reason why we struggle with that so bad is because we're busy saying, I don't want to make them sad. But you don't realize you could open the door to a loved one, to another family member that's struggling just as much as you're struggling with the loss of a mother, or when you lose your mother, lose your father, lose your brother, lose your sister. They don't know, they may not know how to open up the conversation because they don't want to make you say it. But somebody has to be able to say, hey, do you remember when they did this? Do you remember when this happened? And it opens up healthy dialogue and conversation that helps you to move forward, helps you to live in the memories and not the pain of the loss. Because what we have to be able to do is still live on purpose. I can't say it enough. Our loved one, when they was with us, wanted us to be happy, wanted us to live effective lives. And if they wanted that while they were alive, what would make you think that they want you to be sad and miserable while they're gone? That doesn't even make sense in the process of life of what they wanted for you. If you go back, I had the opportunity to, I'm telling y'all, this whole process of doing this grief series has definitely opened up some unexpected areas in my life. I'll say it that way. I had the opportunity this week to go back to read a letter that my brother James had wrote me. In reading the letter, it said how he always knew I had many talents and and I'm gonna do great things in life. Hadn't read this letter probably maybe since he passed away in 2017. But the letter encouraged me so much to look at what I had accomplished from 2017 to now. And his words were true. And it gave me a push to be able to keep going because I knew this was the life that he wanted for me. He wanted me to be happy. He wanted me to be successful. He wanted me to accomplish the things that I was purposed in life to do. So that is an awesome and amazing feeling when you know that. But when you don't take the time to deal with the fact of what your loved one said about you, or even talk to somebody, that's another thing. Oh man, I want to talk about this tonight. When you share with people that knew your loved one of the things that you gain is strength. You gain bits of conversations that they had about you that you wonder, okay, so well, how did they feel about this about me? And those conversations will come up when you least expect it, to encourage you, to strengthen you, to be able to move forward in life. I'm telling you, one of the greatest things that I've learned, now I'm going to say this and I'm going to be really honest and transparent about this. I go home to Atlanta in a couple of days. This will be the first time that I have gone home since my brother Mark passed in July. It will be the first time that I have gone home. Well, with that being said, I will have to deal with, because when Mark passed away, my sibling, the last sibling that I had that passed away, I was in the hospital. I was having my kidney transplant. So I didn't get to go to the funeral. I viewed the funeral from the computer in the hospital. And one of the things that I have not experienced is going into the location or in the place where we spend time together. So I am preparing my heart, preparing my mind for that, because I know that's going to be a different experience. This will be the first time that I went home that he wasn't there. So with that, there are so many things that we have to recognize that could possibly be triggers when it comes down to our loved ones. And when I say loved ones, I'm talking about the parent and the sibling that has passed away, that we have to prepare our minds and our hearts for. And it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to say, this is not healthy for me, or I need you to do, ask for help. Be open about it. Because one thing that I have learned in the loss of my dad and my two brothers is that it's a grief that's like no other grief, and it comes up in the most weirdest ways. Like today of all days was my dad's birthday. Today I laughed all day because I looked at videos of stuff that he did, so I laughed all day today. But there are days that nothing is going on, and I'll just stand up in the kitchen and start crying like, God, I wish my dad was here. And it's nothing wrong with feeling that way, but you can't stay there. So as we move in this grief process, we have to be honest with ourselves, especially when it comes to those kind of relationships. They are relationships that we were born into. My mother carried me. My father carried me. They were the only person. They were my only champion. My brother was right there with me. My sister was right there with me. So when you have a loss like that, it's difficult sometimes to bounce back. But I'm telling you, one of the greatest things that you can use is those people that knew your loved one. Don't isolate yourself. Don't go try to create that person in someone else. That is one of the biggest things that we do. We create relationships during our time of grief that are unhealthy, and we ignore signs and things that are not healthy for us because we just looking to fill a void. We're looking to fill a void. We're looking to move forward. I said something today. I was talking to somebody and I said, I wrote it down. Replacing our loved ones does not, when we replace them, we do not bring value to them and who they were in our life. When we replace them with other people, we do not value, we devalue who they were in our life because they can't be replaced. Whether that's a brother, a mother, a sister, husband, cousin. When we replace people with other people, we cause them to lose value in our life, especially when it comes down to death. We don't want them to lose value. We want to fill the void, but we don't want to take away who they are to us. So tonight, I want us to be able to move forward in the process. I am going to continue working on the book and have it done by the end of March. In this grief process and talking about grief and dealing with grief, surviving the trauma of grief. It's a process that you continuously survive, because when you've dealt with a lot of loss, it triggers every time. One loss triggers another loss, but we have to be able to deal with what comes with it, but not only deal with it, but deal with it healthily, deal with our emotion, deal with our thoughts, and not go into a place of isolation, not go into a place of hiding, not fall into depression and weariness, because that is not the life that we were intended to live. But not only is it not the life we were intended to live, it's not the life that our loved one wanted for us. So as we move forward in this, listen, I'm excited. I'm going to drop some nuggets, more nuggets about dealing with grief and dealing with different forms of grief, because what we don't realize is grief is not just about the death of people. It's also about the loss of things. So maybe that's one of the ones we'll deal with in a couple of weeks. The loss of things, the grief of losing things and losing things that we valued, our homes, our jobs, it just all kinds of things. There's so many layers to this, and I want us to be healthy and have healthy communication about loss, about grief, dealing with parental loss, dealing with sibling loss, dealing with the loss of a spouse, dealing with the loss of friendships. We have to have these healthy, real life conversations so we can move forward in life, be productive, and be able to live a wonderful quality of life. I'm excited about tonight. I hope that something was said, something was shared that will cause you to go forward. If you ever have any questions, want someone to talk to, want to get more insight on the grief process, more insight on trauma, because there's a form of traumatic grief. There's a form of traumatic grief. That's another topic that we can cover. Don't hesitate to reach out. Dr. DeAnna Morris. You can reach out to me on Facebook. You can reach out to me on the page Life Seeds Coaching and Development. The link is in the description of this video. Listen, I am excited, and I hope that something was said tonight that will encourage you, that will push you to deal with the grief. Don't hold it. Deal with it. Let's heal together. Let's be effective together. Grief does not go away. We just learn to carry it with more grace. Have a wonderful night. If you have questions, concerns, don't hesitate to hit me in the inbox. Don't hesitate to reach out. I'm available to serve in any way that I can. This is Dr. DeAnna Morris of Life Seeds Coaching and Development. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. God bless.